Hi, welcome to another Canto Roboflow training movie. In this training movie today, I will show you how to create parameters. Each workflow comes with a fixed set of parameters, but you can add your own. And how do you do that? And why suddenly do you have an edit button? And do you have columns here, for instance? Or in another case, why do you have a folder selection button here, etc, etc. So that's what we're going to talk about today. If you have a workflow and you want to create a new parameter, just click in the list and say new, and here you can type in a name. Now if you just type in a name, it will create a standard plain text parameter. What does this do? When the workflow loads, it will load this parameter into memory. This will become a tag, and the value of this tag will be whatever you type in here. So later in the workflow, you can access this parameter using the tag instruction explained in other training movies. This is actually a global tag. It's stored in the parameters, which is the global section of a workflow. Okay, now if I want to have a little bit smarter parameters, then you can check out this list here below. Unfortunately, there are no carriage returns, so everything is concatenated as one string, but here you can see if you add a certain parameter. So let's say that I say here I have a parameter called catalog, and I add this section, then it will become a parameter that has a drop down with the catalogs. So that can help you for a catalog selector. If you copy paste this as I did, to have a little bit better view on what the options are, and paste it in a text editor. I added some carriage returns for readability. Then you can see that you have a select-catalog-dialog. You have also the ability to create a drop-down list. So for instance, if I use this one and I say test drop and then colon and then value 1 dot two semicolons, value 2, and then you could have a drop down with two values, value 1 and value 2. You could also have a little bit more. So if I say drop 2, and I can say here value 1 hash hash label 1, and it's actually the other way around, but you'll see it in a second. Value 2 label 2. Let me copy it, and then we can redo it in a moment. But if you look now, you have value 1, value 2. If you select value 2, it will store label 2. So basically, as I said, I was wrong. It's you have to do it like this, and drop 3, and you have to say label 1 hash hash value 1, and then label 2 hash hash. And you can have as many entries, of course, in here as you like, but this way you can output to the user a choice of label 1, label 2, but behind the scenes you're actually storing value 1, value 2. This way you have a nice drop down with predefined values. Let's go back to the list. Another very commonly used one is this. So this gives you the opportunity to create a parameter file. a parameter file with several columns, and you define what the column headers are and the titles of the columns. So if I say new parameter and I can say my parent, then I do Control V, I add select-param-table-dialog, then I have value 1, value 2 are my column headers. So I could say name, folder, catalog. I can call them whatever I want, and I can have as many columns as I like. So now I have a parameter file. I can specify wherever I want to put this, but if you click the edit button, it will give you the opportunity to edit that file. So test folder c:\temp and catalog sample catalog. And now you have a little parameter file with rows and columns. Another type that is sometimes used is the export file. So you can have either a mail file or export file. If you use this one, for instance, then you can have something like this: new export, and then Control V. If you now say OK, I have something like this. What do I have? I have the main export file, which will be stored under export.txt, and I can say test, but you can also define a header and a footer. And so I can say header and footer. What means that you have 3 text files in reality. You will have a text file called export.txt, footer export.txt, and header export.txt. So if you're creating some kind of export, you could use these. If you don't need the 2 other ones, you just leave them empty, and then you're fine. You don't need them, maybe, but that's basically how this parameter works. Again, you can store it wherever you like, and etc, etc. Password. I wouldn't use that because it requires some special processing in the workflow, so not often used. But you can have an asset handling set, a Cumulus query, a record field, a Cumulus action, print set, metadata, permission template, even workflow names, workflow activity, workflow state, all in regards to Cumulus status-based workflows. Record filter. And so all these things you can select. Then there's a couple of testers. They give you the opportunity to test an SQL state. So if you have an SQL statement, that field that you want to enter, you can test it that way. If you want, you can also just have a plain text parameter, but if you think that it is useful to be able to test it, well, then you can put in this test SQL, and I can say blah, whatever. And here you do have to specify, of course, the JDBC driver, which should be in your parameters, and the database connection, and then you can have your query, and then you can say test. And if it's a select statement, it will show you the result. And so you can do the same for FTP, for mail, for a query for records. And so having a query into your database. So let me show you into your Cumulus database. So I can go here, I can say new test query. Oh, and that's 1 colon too many. And then I don't even have to type it here. I can test here. I can say in the sample catalog fields, these 2 fields, and I could say record name contains, and of course this is the advanced syntax that you find in the advanced window of the find window, and I could say contains Berlin, like that. and then I can test the query, and I can see it finds one record. And so it is limited to result or return 100 records, so don't expect if you have a query that results in 12 million records that it will show 12 million records. It's limited to 100. And if you do OK, it will store this query in that variable. So you can see here, test query has your query. Same for selection of a folder. You can select a folder, select a file. Param table, mail file, and export file and param file are so param table is what we saw here with this example, but mail file, export file, and param file are actually all pretty much the same, except that for the one it suggests to call it mail, and for the other it suggests to call it etc, etc. But here we go. So parameter, what was I doing? So test 45, whatever, and then Control V, and then edit. And here, and the only difference here is that for this type of variable, you now have a single edit window. So you can enter your data, your information in a single window. While if we were to choose the param type parameter, so if you were to choose the mail or export file, then you would get 3 windows with a header, footer, and a body. The param file itself just gives you 1. And so that's the advantage. If you just want one import field, then you can use that one. If you only have one file to edit. Careful, this parameter file is exactly the same one as another one that I created. That's why it shows content, because we had those 3 columns which with the tab characters in between it. It saves it as a tab limited text. And so if we want to do this safely, let's call this something else, and then we have our plain text. If you need to enter, if you push character return, it executes the button. So if you want to have character returns, you have to do shift enter. So shift enter will give you more lines. Save. Okay. So this was a little training movie on how to add parameters. There's one catch to this. You cannot remove via the interface those parameters. So in worst case scenario, if you ever added a parameter, then you can go to the workflow folder, but please be very careful, of course, because then you're hacking. So make sure your workflow is not running, and then you could go into the Roboflow parameter. There's always a backup file. So if you ever made changes to your parameter files or to your script and said, oh my God, this is completely wrong, well, when you saved it, it has always saved the previous version. So if you ever come in here and want to hack something, make sure to take a copy before doing it. And if I now go in here, imagine that I had here, for instance, test query, or maybe in your dropdown you wanted to add an additional parameter. You just find the section and then don't touch any of the other parameters. Okay, Control F, and maybe you say, okay, I want in that drop down to add also an option with value 3. Well, then you can just come here and edit it and say tac value 3. As I said, not recommended, only worst case scenario. Don't add parameters this way ever. If you want to remove one, just select it and it's gone. If you go to the interface and go edit, you will see that that last parameter that we tried to add with that one parameter file is no longer here. And in this drop folder, you now have 3 options. So you can go into the backend, but it's not recommended. Thank you for joining this training movie, and see you in another one.